Social psychology. This is one of my most favorite areas in psychology. I have a degree in sociology. I also really enjoy abnormal psychology, which is what our last 2 weeks are on. I saw a bumper sticker one time that said, just because you think it doesn't mean you have to believe it. And I strongly believe this ties into some of the discussions that you guys had this week. I know some of you were really uncomfortable with the implicit bias test. I really want to point out that this is a way to measure our unconscious thought. I mean, think about that. Unconscious thought, not easily done. Harvard, which is home to many influential people, found one of the best ways that we can look at that. The implicit bias tests have grown substantially over the last years. But again, it's looking at unconscious. It's looking at categories and then your unconscious evaluation of those categories. So in the test, the third and fifth rounds were really the two that they were making comparisons with. Now, if you scored with a preference one way or the other, does that mean you're prejudiced? No. There are lots of things that influence this implicit bias. Some of it is if you are part of an in-group or an out-group. In-group meaning kind of the preferred group, out-group meaning those who are not in. And so many of those categories looked at in-groups and out-groups. But even if you were a member of an out-group, say due to race or sexual orientation, you may still score with a preference for the more socially accepted group because of the stigma and the way our society functions. So it doesn't show that you have a prejudice, it shows that you have been influenced by society around you. So again, I go back to that bumper sticker and that quote. Because you think it, unconsciously or consciously, doesn't mean that you follow up on it. There is a difference between having these unconscious thoughts, being prejudiced, engaging in discrimination, etc. So I really want to make that fact clear because I think that's where a lot of you had really strong reactions to it is it's not saying that you're prejudiced. It's a way to help you recognize when you have a thought, consciously, unconsciously, that doesn't have to influence your actions. Another great example of this is bystander effect. So hopefully you guys aren't at college parties, but if you were at a college party and people were drinking and you saw somebody being picked on, male, female, whatnot, it's harder to step in and say, hey, this isn't right. It's, because the numbers suggest that somebody else is going to do it. It's not going to be your responsibility. Another example, a car accident on the expressway. You may not call 911 because you think 100 other cars have gone by. Somebody else is going to call 911. Again, it's good to know our implicit bias so that we can have an impact on things like bystander effect and say, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter if 10 people call 911 or 10 people step in. I know that I can make a difference because that's the right thing to do. So if this chapter interested you at all, again, sociology might be a subject that you want to take a look at for a future course. We just touched on a few things here. And I'm a firm believer in if we don't talk about topics, we are doomed to kind of just keep the status quo. So I know that it made you uncomfortable, but sometimes that's needed in order to grow.